Hello everyone, this is such a random, probably very messy video, but I wanted to make an analysis video for some time now. Based on the title, you can probably guess what we're talking about. Gold star for the guy in the back who said queer-platonic relationships. If I sound a little dead, that's because I have a headache and I haven't slept. Yeah. For now, I'll tell you what I'm drawing. This, which is a redraw of a screenshot from the game itself. In case you don't know, In Stars and Time is a game about time loops. Okay, obviously there's a lot more than that. Found family, really sarcastic star beings, and tons of puns. And a warning, there are going to be major spoilers for most likely the whole game. If you don't want to see that, watch a playthrough or buy the game! You must buy the game right now! This video is going to be covering aromantic and asexual discourse in media and life in general, as well as demisexual / demi-romantic discourse. There's just so much hate, and as a demi on both spectrums myself, I love seeing representation in media and especially games like In Stars and Time. It is also going to be covering things such as, obviously, queer-platonic relationships. Definitions are later in the video. I'm going to be doing a kind of deep dive into Isabeau and Siffrin's relationship / friendship, and again, another kind of deep dive into Mirabel and Siffrin's relationship. I'm so sorry if I pronounce any of these names wrong, by the way. All analysis is provided to me by my amazing friend who is absolutely brain rotted by this game, and all credit for that goes to them because I cannot analyze anything to save my life. I am also going to be asking questions from Tumblr. But I did ask the In Stars and Time fandom of Tumblr, so the questions are more centered to the topic we're discussing. All music can be found linked in the description, as well as timestamps for each chapter. I tried to cut the video down as much as I could, so hopefully it's not too long of a video. All that being said, let's jump to chapter 1. First off, let's start with defining aromantic and asexual because I see a lot of misinformation around the labels. Starting with aromantic from the blog Bloomington Pride, an aromantic is a person who experiences little or no romantic attraction to others. Where romantic people have an emotional need to be with another person in a romantic relationship, aromantics are often satisfied with friendships and other non-romantic relationships. What distinguishes romantic relationships from a non-romantic relationship can vary diversely, but often includes physical connection, holding hands, cuddling, etc. The aromantic attribute is usually considered to be innate and not a personal choice. You don't see a lot of aromantic main characters in media, or at all, really. I think the only true aromantic asexual I've ever seen in media portrayed amazingly is Mirabel from In Stars and Time, and I consume a lot of games and media. Just because someone identifies within the Aro-ace or even just the aromantic spectrum does not mean that they will never be in a relationship. For example, me. Aromantic is an umbrella, and there are a lot of terms under it. The ones I am most familiar with are aromantic, as defined above, and demi-romantic, which I am. Demi describes a person who only experiences romantic attraction after developing an emotional connection. There are others, such as, but not limited to, I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm putting it up on the screen. Queer-Platonic and Aro-ace? I don't know how to say these. I see people shit on Aro-ace people because they see it as ruining their ships, quote unquote. I hope people know that you don't have to be shipping characters to enjoy media. If shipping is your thing, go ahead, no one is stopping you, but there are medias and fandoms surrounding shipping. There's whole games about shipping and characters dating and the like. Not everyone will understand romance doesn't need to be in everything for it to be enjoyable, and I get why. And agreeing with another person's opinion here, if all people want and like the characters is to ship them, I don't think they actually like the characters. Another thing my funny brain-rotted friend pointed out, people ignoring one side of the spectrum, the fully Aro/ace end, where shipping romantically is essentially completely off the table, and how the argument that, well, aromanticism is a spectrum, invalidates one side of it majority of the time. Also, another point more towards the character design aspect is that the majority of the time Aro/ace is it's insinuated and not confirmed, which leaves a lot of wiggle room for people to twist it into, well, maybe they're not on the fully Aro/ace side of the spectrum, and therefore that vagueness in a character becomes frustrating and feeds into the discourse. Mira, however, is like 100% on that further end of the spectrum, not just because of her hangout event, but also just in general. Speaking of Mira, we're going to go into kind of a deep dive into her character, all provided by my wonderful friend. I'm going to try and reword things to make them make sense, as they kind of just rambled. So Mira, since she's a housemaiden of Vogard's House of Change, she feels really obligated to do this and eventually comes to the conclusion that she'll bring about the biggest change by finding a romantic partner, which she really hates the idea of. During the hangout event, Siffrin essentially talks her down and says, well, what if you brought change by not changing? Like, nobody's ever done that before, so isn't it kind of change too? And Mira just kind of sits there for a second because she's never considered that before. But yeah, everything in that hangout event screams, this girl is never gonna marry. And I'd even insinuated it from earlier interactions scattered throughout the game. Baseline for that storyline / internal struggle is that she really does not want to try and date and live with somebody because she doesn't like the idea of that. But the idea of following change means you try things even if they're scary or if you don't like them, so she kind of feels like she's backed into a corner. Just a reminder that these are just general dives and they're not meant to be super deep or analytical or anything. So for Siff and Mira, they're definitely super close and only grow closer throughout the game. They're ace buddies. One of the ways the two really get through to each other in the hangout event is Siff reassuring Mira that he's also pretty opposed to certain parts of typical romantic relationships and that she has an oh moment, realizing that this is not just a her problem. It really does shine in the hangout event, and I think Mira picks up a lot of advice from Siff either way, whether they mean to give it or not. My friend, during this rant about them, said, I don't recall if it's Start Again or ISAT that this has this interaction, but Mira gets anxious surrounding the climb up to the house, and her and Isabeau do a breathing exercise together that they pretty much stole right from Siff. You know, the you breathe in, then breathe out snippet after each battle. They're good influences on the other and eventually make a pact to become each other's secret keepers, probably an off term, where they promise to be more open with each other about things. Now for Siff and Issa, me personally, I am a Siff Issa shipper just because I do like seeing queer, like romance in stories. Plug for my own store. No, I'm kidding. For Siff and Issa, it starts out as this very kind of cliche time loop scenario where at some point Siff finds out that, oh, there's more here when it comes to Issa, and I think that this happens in time loop media a lot, where a sort of love relationship gets involved, and because of that, it's really complicated compared to others because, sure, Siff knows now, but the way they know isn't natural, if that makes sense. He feels as if he is doing something he isn't supposed to and is manipulating actions and timelines, and it makes him wonder if it's all really just fake, which of course it isn't. Issa has been crushing on Siff since the beginning, but Siff literally tears himself up over this because what if he's causing all this by manipulating the loops and it's fake, just like other interactions he's tried to force. It gets to a point where Siff just flat out stops trying to get Issa to admit it right at the ending of the loop each time because they're tired of trying to force it, only for it to happen, only for it to get ripped away next loop. Right at the end, when Issa actually does confess, it's like the first time that Siff doesn't actually try to get him to say it because other stuff happens in that loop. But the important part of it is when Issa finally decides he has to do, it's not him who puts his hand out first, it's Siff. And there's a lot of meaning in that. Siff would have always had to have been the one to take that first step and bridge that gap. It takes the both of them. It takes Issa acknowledging it and Siff giving him the go-ahead to do so. So if that's anything, it takes the two of them is the baseline. Also, just a little side note, Siffrin is confirmed, at least on the wiki, that he is asexual like Mirabel. But, and quoting from the wiki here, but unlike her, his romantic orientation is still left undefined. Now, I've only gotten 2 replies on the post I originally put out on Tumblr, but they're actually really good and I wanted to include this. I was very nervous posting to ISAT Tumblr, but everyone who replied was very kind and really put a lot of things into perspective for me. I had some general questions, and they are as follows. Can you describe what a queer-platonic relationship is for you personally? And from now on, it will be referred to as QPR. What are the best aspects of a QPR? Why do you think it is important to portray Aro-ace in QPR and media? What's your stance on the fandom shipping wars? Can you describe what's generally different and similar to traditional romantic relationships and traditional platonic ones? From the first person who wished to remain anonymous, they answered my questions so well and put a lot into perspective. They initially said, "Hello, ISAT fan here is aspec and in a QPR. I don't know that I have any suggestions, but feel free to ask me questions if you have anything more specific to ask." In response to the first questions, they said, "For me, a QPR is just a way to label a relationship so that it doesn't have to fit into society's expectations of any specific type of relationship. I really like the aspects of being able to set our own boundaries and find a very unique relationship that's right for us specifically." And, for most of these, there's really nothing else for me to add. I feel like I should, but that was worded amazingly, and I don't have anything to add because I agree with it wholeheartedly. To my second question, why do you think it is important to portray Aro-ace in QPR media? They replied with, "I think its most important part of representing aspec characters in QPRs mainly boils down to it's a spectrum and not everyone is the same. There is no one formula to follow when writing an aspec character, and there is no one set way a QPR can look. I personally couldn't care less about shipping wars in response to my second question about shipping wars. I enjoy shipping sometimes. I'm an Siffrin shipper as well as a small sloop enjoyer, but I don't really care enough to engage in discourse or anything. It's just fun to see the characters interact. I look at it as different lens to look at characters' dynamic through." To the question, which was, can you describe what's generally different and similar to traditional romantic relationships and traditional platonic ones, they answered, "Like I said before, there is no set definition of QPR, and I'm definitely not qualified to explain everything, but I can say a few things. In my particular case, I found that anyone who looks at me in my QPR will assume we're dating, and the only big difference is how we personally feel for each other and how we choose to label the relationship. For others, it might be different. Really, I feel like the idea of a QPR is that you can pick and choose which parts of a romantic relationship you like and which parts of a platonic relationship you like, and then decide what you're comfortable doing together." I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this chapter and this person's thoughts, because they really just summed it all up in a really beautiful way. The second person, who goes by Zero Binary, said this initially: "Hi, ISAT fan who is Demi here. I feel it would be really relevant to mention Siffrin and Mirabel too," which I did add into the script, so thank you for reminding me about that. "They feel very queer-platonic to me, especially in the context of Issa and Sif if being shipped romantically. Everyone sees relationships differently, and Siffrin's position on the ace spectrum is based entirely on how you play the game. I believe I read something ID5 posted when they said as much, and I couldn't agree more." I'll put the questions on screen for each answer. To the first one, they replied with, "QPR to me isn't all that different from a romantic relationship, just without the typical romance that comes with it. There's still an intense connection and love, just without the romantic attraction, if that makes sense." To the second question, they said, "In a QPR, there's no preconceived idea of what the relationship should look like and what should make you both happy. Since there are no expectations, you can just be happy." And that's really nice, and that's a really great way to put it. To the third, representation is important for everyone, but in terms of Aro-ace rep and QPR rep specifically, aromantic and asexual are already marginalized in a marginalized community. Most people know what a gay person is or a trans person is, and they're represented fairly often now, with varying degrees of quality. Not many writers do anything with aspec people at all. Young people who don't feel that sort of attraction commonly think something is wrong with them or they're broken in some way. The more it's represented in media, the better it'll be for these young people. They'll know they're not alone. Which, that is exactly what Mirabel's whole, thing is with romance, because she thinks she's alone and doesn't understand that it's not just her problem. To the fourth, which I heavily agree with, shipping wars are stupid in my opinion. Not just in the fandom, but in every fandom ever. I personally have seen maybe 1 or 2 ships I don't particularly agree with or like in this fandom. Very simple action was taken, which was scroll past. I don't need to voice that, no, person A should be with person B. The ship isn't hurting anyone, leave it alone. And finally, to the fifth, I'm still figuring this out for myself, so bear with me. In terms of similarities, there's always connection. Something that you and the other person have in common and can bond over. The only real difference for me, personally, is the romantic attraction. The feeling of wanting to be close to this person and spend your life with them. The butterflies and the heart pounding and the intense joy of seeing that person in particular. There's an intensity to platonic attraction as well, but it feels like the heart pounding of when you run a marathon or dance the night away or laugh so hard you can't breathe. The intensity behind a romantic attraction to them feels like being swept off your feet, the momentary action of being in the air, unable to control your descent. It's the way your heart melts and you feel warm and fuzzy and lightheaded. It's the way you hear the ocean when you put your ear to a seashell, or feel the beat of the drums when you concentrate on the music. That's a lot of really abstract metaphor, but the only way I can really describe the feeling. Love is a very beautiful thing, and how it varies and changes, and how love can feel different depending on the people in the context. Both platonic and romantic relationships should have an associated feeling of love. And both of these people said their pieces very beautifully. They make so much sense, and I agree with most, if not all of it. So after all that, what do you guys think? I know this is not my usual content and it wasn't very organized, but I had a lot of fun making this video. I'm also most likely making more if this video gets attention. Maybe not specifically about ISAT, but more just basic analysis videos. Who knows? As always, this script will be linked in the description if you want to read along. I know I tend to stutter over my words a lot, and I'm so sorry. Thank you to my friend who helped me make this video, and thank you to the wonderful two over on Tumblr who also gave me their opinions and perspectives. This video wouldn't be possible without my Patreon members. Please go check out my Patreon for more content and behind the scenes and such. Thank you for watching and have an amazing day!